Welcome to the 5-2 Diet podcast. All the tips and information you need to lose weight and feel great with intermittent fasting. I'm Kate Harrison from the 52dietbook.com. I've lost 31 pounds, that's 14 kilograms, and it's transformed how I eat and how I feel. I've written 4 books about 5-2, I run one of the largest 5-2 groups on the web, and I still fast every week. It's easy, flexible and free. This podcast will help you 5-2. This is my very first 5-2 Diet podcast, and in this episode I'm going to start with the real basics, what 5-2 is and what it can do for you. Whether you're new to 5-2 or you've been doing it a while, I want to share what I've learned and to help inspire you to make some positive changes. This time round, I'll tell you some of my story, though in future episodes I'll be interviewing lots of other people who've used this simple but brilliant approach to change their lives. First things first, what is 5-2? Well, it's a really simple approach to controlling your weight and potentially improving your health in all sorts of ways. Instead of doing a conventional calorie-counted diet where you're cutting down on what you eat every single day, and that gets pretty monotonous, you're actually cutting down twice a week. The general guideline is that you cut down to about 500 calories on those 2 days if you're a woman, or 600 if you're a man, because men generally carry a bit more weight and need more energy to get through the day. You do that twice a week. You choose those days, and we call them fast days, even though they don't involve a complete fast, you'll be relieved to hear, and then the rest of the time you eat normally. This is so simple, so easy, and now we think about it now, so obvious. It's brilliant because it covers every kind of food, every kind of cuisine, wherever you live in the world, all of your own dietary preferences. I'm a vegetarian, for example, and most diets I've followed previously really don't cater for that. In fact, in a funny way, it's less of a diet and more of a strategy or an approach. It's not restrictive. All you have to do is be super careful 2 days a week, and actually you can do it for 3 days if you like, or just the one if you're in maintenance, and then the rest of the time you eat the things you like to eat. Doesn't mean you can go crazy, obviously, because there is a danger of outdoing all your good work on the fast day. But what most of us have found is that being careful those 2 days is enough to help you lose weight and also to completely change the way you look at food. Why am I so passionate about 5-2? Well, in all honesty, I never expected to write about dieting, even though I've read lots of books and tried countless different plans before this one. In fact, back in 2012, I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was in my 40s, I was 11.5 stone. And as I'm only 5'4", that's really quite short in metric, I really did show that weight. So I was a size 16 really in the UK dress sizes. That's a size 12 in US sizes. And although that wasn't really obese, it was certainly in the mid-range of overweight, and I felt it. I was really uncomfortable. And yet I didn't really have any faith that there was any way I'd be able to lose weight in a long-term way. I'd done lots and lots of yo-yo diets. I remember my first diet, age 17, taking crackers and cottage cheese with pineapple to college with me. Yes, it worked, but it never lasted. I always like eating out and trying out new recipes. I've got a sweet tooth and a savoury tooth. I love my cheese. And so the weight would always come back on because it felt like a deprivation. Plus all those guilt issues around food that you might be familiar with too. Then in the summer of 2012, I watched a BBC TV programme, Horizon. It's a science programme, and I saw the billing and it was about fasting. I almost didn't watch because the idea of fasting, going out without food for any length of time, did not seem like a strategy for me. But I decided I'd watch it anyway, and I was absolutely fascinated by what I saw. I can tell you exactly how I was feeling at the time because I've always kept a diary since I was about 13. And this one covers the period before starting 5-2 and afterwards. It is pretty honest in places, but I think that's important because it shows if I can do it, anyone can. Kate Kate's 5-2 Diary Part 1, August 6, 2012. A couch potato watches TV and makes a decision. Weight, 161 pounds, 73 kilograms. Mood, guilty, resigned. Dear Diary, today I'm the fattest I've ever been. A BMI of 27.6, and anything 25 or above is overweight. 11 stone was bad enough. I thought that would be my mental limit, the moment where I took action. Yet the weight is still creeping on. My size 14 jeans, which I always think are really a 16 as they're generously cut, are slicing into my waist. My bra is too tight, and there are lumps and bumps showing when I wear anything but the baggiest of tops. Has anyone seen my willpower? It feels like the slippery slope. I'm out of control, frumpy, middle-aged, and very, very cross with myself. I don't want to be gaining half a stone a year, wearing a size 18 or more before I'm 50, feeling ashamed to go to the beach because I look like the fat lady on a seaside postcard. Yet my willpower is diminishing with age as well. A few years ago, I managed to get to my lowest adult weight, a sylph-like 8.5 stone, thanks to low carbing the vegetarian way. I felt good on it, wore skinny jeans for the first time, and really enjoyed eating lots of lovely cheese, yoghurt, nuts, berries and the rest. And yet even as people congratulated me on my success, a tiny part of me knew it couldn't last. I love bread, cakes, desserts. I have a huge recipe collection, love farmers' markets, nice restaurants, especially Indian or Italian places. Could I really turn my back on pasta, pilau rice and baked goodies for the rest of my life? Plus, if I'm honest, something didn't feel quite right about eating such a restricted diet. Cutting out one food group seemed wrong. Sure enough, the weight crept back on. I tried low carbing again this last month, but I couldn't convince myself it was something that would last, because, frankly, it won't. Fat and fearful. This is not simply about vanity anymore. Both my parents have type 2 diabetes, the kind that's diagnosed in later life, and I've seen the complications it causes, especially to vision, joints and circulation. Their diagnoses also mean my chances of getting it are very high. Plus, there's this strong family history of breast cancer on mum's side, and a friend who's recovered from breast cancer raised doubts about how reliant I was on dairy on the low-carb veggie diet, because she's concerned too much of it might increase her cancer risk. Though, being overweight increases the risk of cancer too. It's really hard to know what to do for the best. I've joined a gym again and I'm trying to go, but realistically, 3 cross-trainer sessions a week are going to burn 1,200 calories maximum. Apparently, to lose 1 single pound of fat, you have to cut 3,500 calories from your diet or do 3,500 worth of activity without eating extra food. Gym going alone is not going to be enough. Yesterday, I found myself Googling diet drugs. The kind that bind the fat you eat and help you pass it out before it gets digested. The side effects are utterly revolting, and yet I went as far as filling in an online form to find out if I'm eligible for them. I am, but apparently they're out of stock, so I'm not alone in looking for a quick fix. There's a TV programme I'm going to watch tonight about fasting. The description of the show is intriguing, but let's face it, I don't have the willpower to do a normal diet, never mind a fast. I suspect it'll just give me even more to feel guilty about. 10:05 p.m. Wow, that was an amazing programme. Really fascinating, full of counterintuitive science and new information. Plus fasting really worked for the presenter, Dr. Mosley. It wasn't even a true fast. He did still eat on his fasting days, just an awful lot less. But let's face it, I've been here before, with low carb, high fibre, F-plan, tum, bum and thigh. The fact is, miracle diets don't exist. Or do they? Maybe I'll give it a try. I sound pretty desperate there, don't I? But I won't keep you waiting for the result. I hit a healthy weight within 4 months, and now as we go into 2015, I weigh 31 pounds, that's 14 kilos less than I did, and I'm not a UK size 16 anymore. I'm a UK 10 to 12, that's a US 4 to 6, which kind of suits my small frame without making me look too skinny. Weight has been the most obvious transformation, but I also feel so much more energetic. I used to get the winter blues at this time of year, and I don't. I feel great. And my BMI, which, as you heard, was 27.6, is nearer 22. You know what though, the biggest change has actually been my attitude to food. I don't feel guilty anymore about the treats that I love, but I also don't feel I want them as often. I do find that those 2 fast days make me eat more mindfully, more consciously, and I also cook much more from scratch. I rarely snack unless I really need a boost because I'm doing something very physical. My body simply doesn't need snacks. I'd rather look forward to a great meal, to feel that sense of appetite and anticipation. So how can something as simple as cutting back on food twice or 3 times a week bring such big changes? I would never have believed how big those changes would have been when I started off. And although that Horizon programme was absolutely fantastic on the science, it didn't set out to be a how-to programme, and so there wasn't much on the practicalities. Every problem I ever have these days, I go straight online and Google it, so that's exactly what I did. But back then, there wasn't much practical information available. The main sources of information about fasting were on bodybuilding sites and sites devoted to paleo or paleo diets. Now, I don't do weightlifting. It doesn't really suit my body. And as for paleo or paleo dieting, well, that's based on cavemen principles and so consists of a lot of meat. And as a vegetarian who loves cheese and the occasional treat, it didn't seem very relevant to me. But I decided I would crack on regardless, and I went back to a lot of that original research by the people featured in the programme and others who weren't included. I also linked up with friends on Facebook, and a few of us were giving it a go, and we started sharing tips and information in a group. This information later went into my first book about 5-2, including that diary as well. But at that time, I didn't even think I could lose weight, never mind write a book about all this. As I started to look at the research, though, it got more and more interesting, and in future podcasts I will go into a lot more detail about the science and the psychology of intermittent fasting. But on a basic level, it's just a form of cutting calories. For decades we've been told that we should never ever experience hunger. All the items of snacks between meals are being pushed at us from every angle, and yet ever since we've been doing that, obesity has been rising. So what if that conventional wisdom that we should eat 3 meals a day and snack and never feel hungry is wrong? What if it is fine, even desirable, to experience a bit of hunger and let our bodies do something other than constantly digest food? Animal studies suggest calorie restriction in any form can lengthen life, but it's very hard to stick to limiting the number of calories you consume all the time. At least we thought we had to do it all the time. The experts featured in Horizon and elsewhere are trying to challenge that conventional wisdom by suggesting that intermittent approach. From a physical point of view, they say it triggers good changes in the body, which help us to lose fat and also potentially cut the risk of obesity and metabolic disease. The presenter of that Horizon, Michael Mosley, who first trained as a doctor, tried an extended fast as was recommended by one of the experts, and it looked like pretty hard going. But a number of other scientists, including Dr. Krista Varady, Dr. James Johnson, and the British research dietitian Dr. Michelle Harvey from the Genesis Breast Cancer Prevention Charity, moved away from pure fasting towards a strict limit on what we now call a fast day or an intermittent energy restriction day. So a lot of them aimed for around about a quarter of what the average adult male or female would need to stay stable weight-wise. Therefore, by cutting that down to about 25% of what we should be consuming, we would both limit our calories several times a week, and we would also potentially bring about those physical changes. There are different approaches to this. So some of the experts, like Dr. Harvey, started off suggesting by fasting or restricting on 2 days a week. Others like Verity and Johnson were suggesting every other day. There was weight loss shown, as you would expect. The more interesting stuff was about how sustainable it was to people. We seem to find it easier to do this on a one-off or twice-off-a-week basis than we do every single day because calorie counting is so monotonous. In terms of the longer-term health effects, it's much harder to track because obviously a lot of the diseases that we're talking about come on over extended periods, 10 years or more. But many of the research studies showed improvements in what we call biomarkers. These are test results that have been shown to indicate higher or lower risks of some of those diseases like cardiovascular heart disease, diabetes type 2 and even dementia. That's the physical side, but what about the psychology? That's been really interesting to me. It sounded so much harder doing a fast day, yet pretty much from when I started out I realised it was the opposite. It's flexible, you're in control, and you can always say to yourself, and this has become my fast day mantra, I can eat it tomorrow. And you know what? Often you wake up in the morning, you don't want to eat it. That craving has gone. Choosing not to eat every time you feel a bit peckish is also very powerful. It shows you that appetite is just one of the body's signal, and if you ignore it till you choose to eat, you can get on with other things in life. I often find I work more effectively on a fast day. I'm fasting today and certainly I feel full of energy and inspiration. That feeling, that sense of control is a theme that comes up again and again in our Facebook groups. Another word that comes up really often is freedom. Freedom from guilt, freedom from pretty horrible diet foods. It's a theme I will come back to in later podcasts. What about you? Why should you 5'2"? I know this probably all sounds too good to be true, but the joy of it is that it is really easy to do, and there's no expensive supplements, none of those disgusting diet foods. Yes, as I admit in later podcasts, at first fast days can feel tricky, though as I've said, fasting isn't total. You can manage up to 3 meals in your day if you're making really clever choices. You may miss eating regularly, but hunger is less of a problem than you'd think. It's a lot to do with the psychology as well as the physiology. And the unfamiliar feelings are because we usually eat all the time, but actually getting back in touch with your appetite is a really useful signal. It's time for a quick health warning. There are some people who need to be wary of trying fasting. It's the same with any significant change to your diet. If you're pregnant or breastfeeding, you shouldn't fast, as there's no research on the effect on you or your baby. It's the same with children and teenagers who are still growing. Talk to their doctor if you're concerned about your children's weight. If you have a history of eating disorders of any kind, a focus on calorie counting or restricting food may not be a good idea, so do talk to your specialist first. If you've got an ongoing condition or you take medication, speak to your GP or specialist. We have lots of people in our Facebook group with type 2 diabetes or thyroid conditions, and they've achieved great results. But you do need to be safe rather than sorry. I'm not medically qualified, and this podcast is simply about sharing what I've learned. I'm not a doctor, but I am a natural skeptic through and through, and I've read up on fasting because of that. I want to understand what's going on. Experts speculate that fasting works because it can encourage changes at cell level, and that helps our bodies to heal and repair and even dispose of malfunctioning cells that could go on to cause cancer or other problems. Also, by taking a rest from constant consumption, we're relearning our appetite, and when our bodies are not digesting food, they're encouraged to use fat as fuel instead. And which of us wouldn't mind losing a little fat here and there? I'd say if you're considering this, what have you got to lose? My only regret is that we didn't think to challenge conventional wisdom sooner. I'd have had years free of guilt and years of feeling great. That's an overview, and in the next podcast, I'll take you through the steps for preparing for your first fast or getting back on the 5-2 fast train if you've taken a break. If you can't wait for the next one, you could buy one of my books. The 5-2 Diet book introduces my experiences and has more of that warts and all diary, while the 5-2 Good Food Kitchen is my newest cookbook. Lots of recipe ideas and lots more truly inspiring stories. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I'm off for a tasty fast day supper. For more free tips, recipes and information, visit the5-2dietbook.com. Follow me on Twitter at the52diet or download free samples of any of the books online at Amazon. Join in the lifestyle change everyone's talking about.